And yeah, she made the guy squirm. Woo! This is great. You know, there's headlines all over the place about how great Kamala Harris did on William Barr, but I asked myself, and now I'm asking you folks, what does it all mean? Hey folks, how you doing? My name is Tim Black. If you're new to the channel, subscribe now, hit the bell. All right, so while most normal Americans were busy watching Coachella, Beyonce performance, or Endgame from Marvel, or they were catching up on Game of Thrones, getting ready for the new Game of Thrones, and they've been engrossed in that, political junkies like me have been busy focusing on politics, even though we're a year away from the primaries. And some of us have been distracted by shiny objects. Shiny objects like Pete Buttigieg, or Booty Judge, and Beto O'Rourke. I mean, how could you not be distracted with his hands? His hands are distracting. Or the Yang Gang. Now, if you're new to this channel, you may not know that I'm a staunch Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, and sometimes Elizabeth Warren supporter. So I really pull for progressive candidates. I want to let you know that. But I've been trying to tell people, and a lot of people haven't been listening. You know, I don't know what it is. But they don't believe me when I tell them that the most formidable foe to the progressives taking over the Democratic Party is the DNC. Yeah. But besides that, corporate media. But besides that, it is Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, the top cop. Now, just when I thought no one was listening to me, just when I thought no one was going to agree with me on this, in comes the unlikely supporter of my theory. He's a former presidential candidate for the Republican Party in 2012 who failed. He's a former Speaker of the House. And he's someone who likes bagels and donuts way too much. Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich was on CBS where he talked about who would be the most formidable foe to come out of the Democratic primary. Hint, it's not Amy Klobuchar.
Yeah, because you are a student of history in addition to being a former politician. We have 21 Democrats running for president. Right. If you haven't heard, Joe Biden's the latest to throw his hat in the ring. You know the former vice president. Who do you believe of that crop of 21 candidates could be the biggest threat to President Trump?
Well, I think the one most likely to be nominated is Kamala Harris.
You do?
Yes.
Kamala Harris, you think, is the one most likely to be nominated. Why?
Well, because she has California as a base. She's a very articulate and I think likable person. And I think that she represents a new generation in a way that Biden and Sanders are going to find very hard to be able to match. So it's the dynamic of the Democratic Party right now is to the left in a way that I think Biden can't cope with. And it's also to newer faces in a way that I think Sanders has a hard time coping with. So that's just my bias. My guess is if you had a theoretical presidential race game, that probably Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, would be the most dangerous opponent.
Because?
Well, he's from the Midwest. He's a mayor of a small town. He has no particular public record. He can be like Jimmy Carter used to be, be a Rorschach test, and you paint on him what you want.
Right.
But I think that he probably has a really hard time getting through the process.
So you're not buying the polls as they are now that has, you know, the former vice president in the lead?
No. Somebody, it may have been your folks, but somebody did a poll this last week where they just said, tell me your favorite candidate. And 54% of the Democrats had no name. That if you go in, I mean, Biden has a huge, and Sanders both have the advantage that they have national name ID. So if you have a list and you're the average person, those two kind of leap out because you sort of know them. But if you said how deep and how aggressive is Biden's support, I think it's very thin. I think outside the Washington establishment, and that he raised a lot of money, but he raised most of it out of the Washington establishment.
So what does it say to you then that former President Barack Obama is not yet endorsing and probably, according to some reports, is going to wait to see who the eventual nominee is?
I think that's what George W. Bush did. I think that, and George H.W. Bush did. I think it's perfectly reasonable for a president to say, look, the party's got to make its decision, and I'm not going to step in and try to influence it. And because you also face the embarrassment, what if you step in and your candidate loses?
Right.
Is that then a repudiation of the president?
Exactly. It's a good point.
I don't know if I trust Newt or not. I mean, my mind's telling me Bernie Sanders, Tulsi Gabbard, or Senator Warren are the best choices of the country. They definitely are the most progressive. But maybe Newt has a point. Or maybe he's a Republican operative who's just saying this to get into my head. But maybe he has a point. Go ahead, give it up. Come on. You know Newt Gingrich made some good points. Come on, admit it. I know you don't want to, but you gotta. Why Kamala? Why? It's easy. She's very contradictory. Her whole career she's been, 1 minute she's progressive, the next minute she's a hardliner. Tough on crime, then she's caring about the babies, then she's trying to lock up the babies' mamas. Kamala Harris has been all over the board. And depending on what time of the day it is, will be which side of the Jekyll and Hyde that is Kamala Harris that she will show to you. Also, it doesn't hurt her that she has a media that loves playing to her. Also, it's not for nothing that Kamala Harris knows how to throw around platitudes like she's feeding pigeons at the park. Check her out here at the She the People event where she starts talking about immigration.
I have family members who are undocumented and live in danger every day.
Yeah.
As president, what will you do to stop deportation agents from tearing more families apart?
So, first of all, we need a president of these United States who understands that we are a nation of immigrants, and instead of vilifying folks because he's trying to scapegoat folks to distract from the fact that he ain't done nothing, we need to have a president of the United States who understands that if we are going to be true to the values of who we say we are, if we are going to be true to the actual history of what created us and who we are, then we will have a commitment from the President of the United States, which is the President of the United States I will be, that will pass comprehensive immigration reform, that will stop allowing the United States government to commit a human rights abuse at the border, which is what this family separation policy has been. I will be a president of the United States that keeps our word to those dreamers that we gave DACA protection instead of pulling it out. I will be a president who understands that those young people who are DACA recipients and dreamers did not just fall out of the sky onto the earth. They have parents who also deserve protection. And we just need a president of the United States who uses her bully pulpit in a way that understands that if we are going to be strong as a country, we must be committed to our stated values. That's part of what has given us strength on this globe. And right now we are ceding that power when we have a president of the United States that is using that bully pulpit to divide and to sow hate. We've got to end that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You know, Kamala Harris was supportive of a policy that made police in California report every kid to ICE so that she could begin the process of deportation. Yeah, that was Kamala too. That was Kamala before she saw the light that she's walking into now, called running for president. That's the light. But man, they love putting her on display and people love clapping for her. Notice how in that conversation, in that dialogue, that exchange, there was basically no tangibles. She didn't say people weren't going to get deported. She didn't say people were going to have a pathway to citizenship. She made no real policy claims in her conversation. Just a bunch of talking. We're going to help the kids. We're going to stop this. We're going to be more humane. What does humane mean? It can mean anything. That's the magic and the beauty of Kamala Harris. The magic and beauty of Kamala Harris is the hands. It's all in the hands. It's also in the projection of talk. See, Kamala Harris is really good at making grandstands about things that don't mean much. A lot of people didn't know who Kamala Harris was until she cut her teeth chewing up Jeff Sessions. To what end? It didn't matter. He still got confirmed. Same thing with this guy, what's his name? The new guy on the Supreme Court? I see him. It's the guy who loves the beer. Kavanaugh, same thing. Kamala Harris made a big grandstand and it got a lot of attention, but he still got confirmed. It did nothing. For more nothing, grandstanding, looks good but means nothing. I take you to this morning where Kamala Harris grilled William Barr, the Attorney General who wrote up the memo based on the Mueller report. You know, there was a letter leaked saying that Mueller was writing to William Barr, the letter saying that William Barr didn't express his thoughts correctly from the report, and now people are blaming William Barr, saying he was bought and paid for, that he's defending Donald Trump when he shouldn't, and all this stuff. And anyway, here's the clip of Kamala Harris digging into William Barr.
Accurate. We accepted it as accurate. And made our,
so you accepted the report as the evidence?
Yes.
You did not question or look at the underlying evidence that supports the conclusions in the report?
No.
Did Mr. Rosenstein review the evidence that underlines and supports the conclusions in the report, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge. We accepted the statements in the report,
Did
and
anyone
the characterization of the evidence is true.
Did anyone in your executive office review the evidence supporting the report?
No.
No. Yet you represented to the American public that the evidence was not, quote, sufficient to support an obstruction of justice offense.
The evidence presented in the report. This is not a mysterious process. In the Department of Justice, we have pros memos and declination memos every day coming up. And we don't go and look at the underlying evidence.
Sir, would you support...
We take the characterization of the evidence as true.
As the Attorney General of the United States, you run the United States Department of Justice. If in any U.S. attorney's office around the country, the head of that office, when being asked to make a critical decision about, in this case, the person who holds the highest office in the land, and whether or not that person committed a crime, would you accept them recommending a charging decision to you if they had not reviewed the evidence?
Well, that's a question for Bob Mueller. He's the U.S. attorney. He's the one who presents the report.
But it was you who made the charging decision, sir. You made the decision not to charge the president.
No, in a pros memo and in a declination memo.
You said it was your baby. What did you mean by that?
It was my baby to decide whether or not to disclose it to the public.
And whose decision was it? Who had the power to make the decision about whether or not the evidence was sufficient to make a determination of whether there had been an obstruction of justice?
Prosecution memos go up to the supervisor. In this case, it was the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General who decide on the final decision. And that is based on the memo as presented by the U.S. Attorney's Office.
I think you've made it clear that you've not looked at the evidence. We can move on. I think you've made it clear, sir, that you've not looked at the evidence, and we can move on. Will you agree to consult career DOJ ethics officials about whether your recusal from the 14 investigations that have been discussed by my colleagues is necessary?
I don't see any basis for it. I already consulted with them, and
you have consulted with them about the 14 other investigations?
About the Mueller case.
Have you consulted with the career DOJ ethics officials about the appropriateness of you being involved or recusing yourself from the 14 other investigations that have been referred out?
On what basis?
Conflict of interest, clear conflict of interest.
What's my conflict of interest?
I think the American public has seen quite well that you are biased in this situation and you've not been objective, and that would arguably be the conflict of interest.
Well, I haven't been the only decision maker here. Now, let's take the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who was approved by this Senate 94-6 with specific discussion on the floor that he would be responsible for supervising the the Russian investigation.
I'm glad you brought up that.
Okay,
That's a
and
great
he has
topic.
30 years experience, and we had a number of senior prosecutors in the department involved in this process, both career and non-career.
Yes, I've
who
read
all
the
agreed
process,
on the
sir.
disposition.
I have another question. And I'm glad you brought that subject up because I have a question about that. Early.
Yeah, she made the guy squirm. Woo! This is great. You know, there's headlines all over the place about how great Kamala Harris did on William Barr, but I asked myself, and now I'm asking you folks, what does it all mean? To what good is it? You just want to see someone get shivved on the stand. That's a great thing, I guess, if you're into that type of thing. But I don't understand how it changes anything. But people are eating it up. And Kamala knows it. Here's Kamala Harris right after grilling William Barr.
Okay. Yes, please.
Okay.
We waited probably.
Just dive into this little den you've created. Okay, I gotta go vote though. So
No, I
yeah.
understand. You finally got him to sort of narrow down quick questions on exactly what you wanted to hear. Do you feel like there is a huge conflict of interest now for him moving forward in any sort of capacity?
I do believe that, and I believe that what was, I mean, absolutely enlightening and should be deeply troubling to the entire American public is that he made a decision and didn't review the evidence. No prosecutor worth her salt would make a decision about whether the President of the United States was involved in an obstruction of justice without reviewing the evidence. This Attorney General lacks all credibility and has, I think, compromised the American public's ability to believe that he is a purveyor of justice.
Should you resign? Should you resign?
Yes.
And Kamala Harris is dangerous because she's a woman of color. She's dangerous because she knows how to play to the camera. She's dangerous because she's very articulate. And she knows how to make people feel good. And she has hot sauce that she likes and all these other intangibles that people like. And she can dance to Cardi B with her headphones on, her earbuds. Yeah, that's what it was. And then she can get somebody in the corner and corner them and hit them with all types of, verbose, language that hurts their feelings. But is Kamala Harris a progressive? I don't think she is. I think she's whoever she thinks she needs to be to succeed. And I understand that's a corporate way. That's a corporate neoliberal, the corporations. We got to feed the corporations. They pay us. We got to feed the donors. They pay us. Hey, just the fact that she met with Hillary Clinton before she ran, that turned me off. Then I looked at her record. In 2010, she was supposed to be a big-time reformer in the as the prosecutor, as the California Attorney General, and she went in there and she said, "Hey, I'm a reformer. She had the this program, Smart on Crime. She put out a book, Smart on Crime, all of a sudden after being a tough prosecutor. Right now, all of a sudden she was smart on crime because that's what she needed to be. And then she would do things that were totally hypocritical, such as fight against the release of prisoners who were innocent via DNA results, or keep quiet on a lab that was run by a corrupt junkie who tainted all the evidence. And her rationale was, we're going to lose money. Forget innocence. We're going to lose money. What about backing cops and not forcing them to wear body cams? What about refusing to prosecute cops? I mean, she ingratiated herself to progressives and to the activist community when she she chose not to seek the death penalty for a cop killer, but then she turned around and supported the death penalty in California. Like, you love her, but you hate her. You can't trust someone like that. And, one of the excuses that they give is that she was in a job that you have to be tough. Well, I get it. You're attorney general. You were a prosecutor. You were a district attorney. I get that. My thing has always been with Kamala Harris. It's not personal. I don't personally know Kamala Harris. But maybe just maybe, people who lock up poor folks, black folks, like hotcakes, shouldn't want to become president. And maybe if they are, they have to run as who they really are. Republicans. Subscribe to this channel, become a member of the Tim Black Wolf Pack. Find this wolf behind me. Sign up for $5. You'll be helping independent media and you'll get access to my 4 shows, which are Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Friday's the call-in show. I encourage you to be there. You get to get on the line and have your voice memorialized.